Hey, welcome to Dan's Model Works, and we are back at the clutter zone. And as you can see, we're working on the stair car. We're back working on this again. It's been a while since I've done an update on the stair car, mostly because been busy with work, had a few other things to do, and there's a project that needs to be done before Christmas, and hopefully there will be a video sometime around Christmas on that project. So, before we can do anything else, we need to get rid of part of the frame. We need to find out how much we have to remove. So let's, through the magic of editing, go up somewhere else. So we're up in my kitchen. This is my cluttered kitchen table. You know, I understand that some people actually eat on their kitchen table. I should try it sometime. This is my son's 1950s typewriter, which he seems to think is just the most awesome thing. And back over here, we have a slide carousel. I think I've got about 30 of these to go through. They are my father's pictures that he took for most of his life. He did them on slides. And this gizmo here is for converting slides into digitized photos. But we are here at my cluttered kitchen table to look at this. So this is what I refer to as stair car number 2. And it's not the 1978/79 that we're building. It's the weird 1967 where they've grafted the 79 grill and bumper onto a much older pickup truck. And if we look closely, you can see how the hood kind of comes forward as opposed to laying back. And of course, the other spotting feature is it has a plain steely as a front wheel. It doesn't have a complementary dished wheel on the front as it should. So, as I switch handholds here, what we want to do is we want to find out what is the distance between here and the axle. And the easiest way to do that is to put a piece of paper on the screen, and you can see that I've got a little X marked there that lines up with the axle. So we know that this distance, which hopefully you can see, is the correct distance between our axle back, or between our cab back and the middle of our axle. So we want to find a landmark here on the truck. And lo and behold, if we put it on the X, if we line that up at the back of the cab, we pretty much come to the fender, just slightly into that front fender opening. So we know that if we measure that on the model, that will give us that this distance here is the same as this distance here. So we'll be able to go back down to the workbench and we'll be able to measure it and then say, right, this is how far behind the cab our rear axle should be. So using what we've learned off of the photograph, remember from the back of the cab to just ahead of the beginning of the wheel well, pretty much what I've shown here, that's the same dimension from the back of the cab to the middle of the rear axle. So I make that to be about 2 1/4 inches. So the measurement we're really looking at back here is, I'd say it's just about 3 1/4. And I said 2 1/4. So all along I've been saying we're going to have to take about 1 inch out. So that looks like what we're going to be doing, is taking about 1 inch out of the total frame. So if we look at our frame from above, we need to find 1 inch we can lose. We could lose 1 inch right there. And at least the frame is basically straight at that point. And not only that, we can avoid the front spring hanger as well. One thing I think I'm going to do that should simplify
strengthening our frame once we've glued it together is I'm going to lose all of this floor pan right here. I'm going to get rid of all of that. And then that way I'll have just the main frame that I can glue strengthening pieces onto. So I'm going to pretty much Dremel all this out. So I've removed the superfluous floor pan from the outside of the frame. And then I was about to start hogging it out from the inside when something occurred to me. The frame isn't going to return to the higher position until way behind the cab if I remove it right here. So where I really need to remove my distance is I need to take a plug out here before the dog leg, then I need to take another plug out after the dog leg to make a total of 1 inch. And then that way the dog leg will start here, go up, and then go to the rest of the frame. Because of course this is for a long wheelbase, long cab truck. So it's going to be a little more complicated, but I think it'll be better that way. I've decided I'm going to attach the dog leg part of the frame to the front frame before removing the little bit that I'm going to need at the back. And then that way I've got stable points to measure from, because I don't know if I kind of screwed up on how much I removed in the front segment. So these little pieces that are sticking off, they're nothing more than 10 thou styrene, and they're basically strengthening plates, because there really isn't a whole lot of gluing surface the edges of the frame. So I've let the glue dry overnight, and I trimmed away the excess of my reinforcing plates. And it seems to be pretty strong. Probably as strong as it was originally. So this has eliminated some of the distance we need to get rid of. Because remember, we need to get down to 2 1/4. So we're currently at about 2 5/8. Now I've removed the second plug, this time before the dog leg and the frame, and I'm going to reattach it the same way. Just going to put some 10 thou styrene on either side, then mash it together with lots of glue, clamp it, and that should get our frame down to the right length. Alright, let's see how we did. Back of the cab to the wheel well is about 2 1/4 inches. Back in a cab to the middle of the axle, 2 1/4 inches. I know it's tough to see with me kind of jostling it around, but we're within less than 1/8 of an inch. So that is our chassis shortened. Now we can move on to building the rest of this model. Before I paint the frame, I want to make sure that I've got my engine mounting sorted out. So I've put a yoke in here to hold the tail of the transmission. And then you can see I've added these 2 little support pieces there that will come up to the sides of the engine, so that when I put it in place, it actually has a positive side-to-side mount. So we'll be able to glue it in there, and I'll know that it's where it needs to be. I've started painting the frame, at least the black, and I've glued the engine in place. As well as that, I've installed the spark plug wires, and I did end up using the same material I did last time on the racer's wedge, this really fine monofilament illusion cord, although I did cut the wires a lot shorter than I did on the other one, because they were really kind of springy. I think these are a little bit closer to the length they should be. But I'm going to allow that to dry, and then I'm going to install a drive shaft, and then I can really move forward on, the the superstructure, the upper areas. The engine bay of the AMT 350 kit, or sorry, well, it is a 350. The engine bay is really quite disappointing, as I've said before. One of the biggest problems is this little thing, this blob here that's supposed to represent the radiator. I mean, first of all, it's dead smooth. I don't think it's nearly wide enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to cast one using the same mold that I used for the racer's wedge. After all, that is a Ford radiator or similar. And then I'm going to put that in there. And I think that should look a whole lot better than this featureless rectangle. This is the opening I've cut up in the front radiator support, because if we look at the piece that was in there, you can see how small that little rectangle really was, especially if we compare it to, now this is the radiator out of the AMT Econoline, and the reason that it's kind of angled here is once I had the casting done, I tried to fit it in, and of course with these massively, I don't know if they're exaggerated or not, but the fenders coming in the way they do, I needed to remove quite a bit to get it to fit. So you can see that it now fits in there, but I even had to, if we look down here, cut some small notches in those fenders to get the radiator to go in all the way. And at first I was like, geez, am I ever going to get that to go down all the way? And then I remembered, well, the radiator will actually stick up quite a bit, because, and that's one of the main reasons that the hood has such an exaggerated cowl, is that the top of the radiator actually comes above that frame quite a ways. So now that we have a decent radiator go in place, at least from the inside it should look good. From the outside, of course, we'll have our front clip on there, and that should keep us from seeing the fact that the front of this is plain. I was briefly toying with the idea of hogging out the front clip from behind so that we'll be able to see through the grill, but the actual grill itself is pretty thin. And if memory serves, on the real truck, I think this was stamped metal. I could be wrong, but I think it was stamped metal, so it wasn't particularly thick anyway. So I just get the feeling that if I try to mill this out from behind, I'm probably going to end up ruining the part. So I think I'm just going to chicken out, use the common sense approach, and I'm just going to black out all of those openings, and I think that will be fine. So our radiator is now glued in place, and I've got the cab once again mocked up on the chassis. So the fan doesn't look like it's going to chew up the radiator, which is good. So things are coming along. I used the drive shaft from the Super Duty kit to connect the engine from the 79 kit to the rest of the frame. I did have to short it in several places, mainly so that the carrier bearing and the universals and everything ended up being in, the places they should be. So we've got our wheels on, and they're painted as well. That's why I had to take them off, because I wanted to airbrush them. Engine is mounted in place, and we've got our drive shaft in. And I was hoping to have more accomplished in this video than this, but I want to get an update in before Christmas. So here it is. And I've also painted the cab and the hood a nice glossy white. I know they were white to start with, but that was just the plastic. And before I'm going to be able to do final assembly on the cab, I'm going to have to paint the blue and the red stripe on. So that will still need to be done. And before I get into the really heavy construction on the back of the stair car, I want to have the cab basically assembled and mount it, or at least to the point where I can clip it on and off like I had it before, because there's a lot of measurements we need to take off of the cab. So one thing I have established is, by looking at the photos, the distance between the rear of the cab and the front of the fender well, that is the distance between our axle center line and the very end of the vehicle. So we have established that, so I can start working on the foundation for the staircase and everything like that. But that will be for another video. But I wanted to get this basically published so people know where we are with the stair car and that it's still being worked on. And like I said, the next really big thing that's got to happen is we've got to finish up this cab so that at least we can pop it on and off.
Okay friends, one more thing I'd like to show you today is this. This handsome devil is me, 28 years ago, and I'm about to ride that bicycle with all my camping gear from Ottawa, Canada to London, Canada. I did not travel in a straight line, but went in a meandering path that went wherever I thought would be interesting. It took about 7 or 8 days, and I rode between 100 to 200 kilometers per day, or 60 to 120 miles per day. Whether or not I was handsome back then is debatable. The important thing is I only weighed about 140 pounds at age 20. I am now 48 years old, and as of yesterday I weighed 267 pounds. Yes, I've almost doubled my weight in the last 28 years. I do still have an active physical job, but I'm tired of working and living while carrying around an extra me on my back. From here on in, so as to inspire, or maybe to shame myself into slimming down, I will publish my weight at the end of each video and put that weight in the description along with the publish date. I probably won't ever see 140 pounds again, but it would be nice to see the underside of 200. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep on modeling.